thank you for your kind invitation and good evening. And be with you and to speak with you on perhaps some observations that I have made over the past few weeks as we have been going around the country and trying to see what exactly it is that we as public servants need to do. And I have to say that this, in my time in politics, as has been explained, I first became vice governor in the year 1980 and have been in politics since then. But in all that time, I have to say that this election has been a most unusual one. You could even say that it is a confusing one. In fact, the word magulo has been mentioned, has been used to describe this election. And I would not disagree with that. Simply because of our electoral system, we have begun to notice that many changes in the way that we conduct our elections. And that is why I have begun to come to the conclusion that the next administration, that will be the next incoming administration, has a lot of work to do in the restructuring of many parts of our government. Starting, of course, with the electoral process, starting even with which has been changed from what the original conception was to what we have now. One of the aspects of that I see has become very different from what it used to be is the position, for example, of vice president. Because the position of vice president has become a singular position, whereas before we elected our president and our vice president together. And now we have separated the two positions and they are voted in separately, which makes which requires a redefinition of the position of vice president. And what is one to do? Should one be blessed by a successful campaign for vice president, how each vice president will have to redefine that position. In fact, one of the most often asked questions that I have from the media and some other observers is very simple. Sabi nila, Senator Marcos, anong gagawin mo pagka yung magiging Pangulo ay naging Vice Presidente ka, yung iyong Pangulo ay hindi kayo magkasama, hindi kayo magkapartido. Kako, hindi problema yan dahil I am very well positioned. Bakit? What do you mean? Kako, ayan, nandyan ang ating butihing mayor, Mayor Duterte. Kaibigan na kaibigan ko yan, matalik, walang problema, we will be able to work together. The Vice President, Jojo Binay, comes from the northern part of the country. Sabi ko, parang magkakampi na kami kaagad. Senator Miriam is my running mate. So, of course, we will be able to work together, and she's my running mate because we agree on very many ideological aspects of government. Mar Rojas is the cousin of my wife, so I have an inside track with him too. And then Grace is my sister. Di walang problema. Sinasabi nila, panay kanilang chismis. Na ganito, bawat kang punta. Totoo pa na ganito, totoo pa na ganyan. Itong chismis na lumabas na noong 2013. Sabi ko, kung di nyo ako titigilan, kakarin ko na nga yung balita ko. But kidding aside, there is very much that we have to do in the next, for the next administration. The changes in the electoral system is something that we will have to look at. The changes in our form of government is even something that we have to look at. The examination of the advocacy of our good mayor and presidential candidate, Mayor Rudy Duterte, is also about the federalism. Yan ay dapat nating tignan. Dahil sa ngayon, maliwanag na tayo ay kumakapapa at marami tayong naging mga eksperimento tungkol sa pamahalaan na hanggang sa ngayon ay nakikita natin na yung iba naging effective, yung iba hindi. The electoral process, the multi-party system, is something that we will have to examine. It is something that I think that it is an experiment that I believe may be coming to an end. Simply because it is, as I said, it is clear that when we are going around and we see the party structure, has a great deal used to have a great deal to do with our elections. If you remember, meron nung two-party system tayo, meron tayong nasyonalista, meron tayong liberal. Yung tao, minsan, lalo na yung mga malalakas na area, ay hindi na nila iniisip kung sino ang kandidato, basta kami, nasyonalista kami, basta kami, liberal kami. And this made for a very strong party structure. And there are advantages to this. And one of the advantages that I see is that the quality of leadership from a two-party system is probably higher. And why do I say that? Because I always say that in a democracy, anybody can be president. But a democracy or otherwise, not everybody can be a good president. And sometimes we see in the past few years that it has been the weakness in leadership that has caused us some problems. But in a two-party system, in a multi-party system, anybody can set up a party. Wala pa tayong pagkawala, hindi pa natin nauunawaan yung ideological basis ng bawat partido. Kagaya sa ibang lugar, pag sinabing conservative party, mga konserbatibo talaga yan. Liberal party, they are liberals in their thinking and in their ideology. Whereas in the multi-party system we have here in the Philippines, the parties are only a grouping of convenience for each election. And every time that one member moves from one party to another, there is no cost to that kind of political turn-cultism. And again, to go back to the two-party system, we see that alam naman natin, pag kami dalawang partido, lahat naman yung nasa mga membro ng partido, may ambisyon naman lahat yan. Lahat yan gustong maging governor, maging mayor, maging senador, maging presidente. And the party, wanting to field the strongest candidate, will go through a process within the party to choose the best candidate. So when that process is finished, meron silang ihanap, sabi nila, eto ngayon ang kandidato namin. Yan sa palagay namin ang pinakamagaling at pinakamagandang pag-asang manalo at pinakamagiging magaling na Pangulo, magiging magaling na gobernador, na mayor, etc. Yung kabilang partido naman, ganun din ang ginagawa nila. Kaya ang lumalaban sa bawat eleksyon ay yung pinakamagaling sa bawat partido. At kung kahit sino ang manalo diyan, ay magaling yun. Dahil talagang pinaglaban nila yung kanilang pagkakandidato. And so, that is something that we really need to re-examine. Because it affects very clearly the quality of leadership. And to do this, again, now I mentioned the talk of federalism. And that is something, the form of government that we are trying to examine. I am, in principle, very much in agreement that we should, at the very least, examine the possibility of having a more federalized form of government than what we have presently today. A federalized form of government spreads the centers of power around the country. Because there are many centers of power. Each federated state can be considered a center of power. Whereas we have now, everything is centered on Manila. Kapag nagkagulo sa Manila, nagkakagulo ang Pilipinas. Pero kung federalized system of government ay kahit magkagulo sa isang lugar, hindi naman maapektuhan ang ibang lugar. Pangalawa diyan ay mas malapit ang gobyerno sa tao. Dahil a federalized system of government is essentially a local government that is put together under the umbrella of the federal government. And that way, people are more attuned to the problems that each area faces and the problems that each part of the country faces, including the possible solutions. And so it's something, as we try to make ourselves better, as we try to make governance in the Philippines better, this is something that we really should examine. And this will require, again, nothing less than constitutional change in our for our country. And I think that it is time that we again study the question as to what the constitutional changes are going to be required. Napapag-usapan sa nakaraang ilang taon ang tinatawag na economic provisions na kailangan natin palitan sa ating saligang batas dahil ito'y nagiging sagabal na sa mga investor na gusto pumasok sa ating pagpatakbo ng ating ekonomiya. And so again, this time I think that there have been many changes since 1987 when our constitution was written. There is very much that we need to do. There is very much that we need to re-examine. And many of these attempts at good governance have been experiments. And many have succeeded. Many have not done as well as we had hoped. And that is why I believe that it is very important in this coming election that we are able to discern from our different candidates kung ano ba talaga ang kanilang pinaplano. Meron ba talaga silang iniisip para sa ikabubuti ng ating mga kababayan? Meron ba silang plano? Meron ba silang nalalaman na maaaring gawin para mas maganda ang pagbigay ng serbisyo ng gobyerno sa taong bayan? Is there a new vision? Is there a new idea? Is there a new direction that we can take? This is what we are facing now. We must make those changes. We must move forward. We must continue to find ways to make governance better, to find a way that the services that government provides to its people is something that is well felt, not only by certain sectors, but all of the populace. And that is something that we need to do, and we need to do it very soon, because we have been left behind by our neighbors in ASEAN. We have been left behind by those other so-called developing countries, and the potential, I believe, of the Philippines has not yet been completely realized. And that, I believe, although, as you say, the JCs is a non-political organization, it's a civic organization. Nevertheless, there is a role for JCs to play in this process. You are not I am not saying that you should campaign for one political party or one candidate or another. But what I'm saying, perhaps you can help in the guiding of our people in trying to determine who for them will be the best candidate to make those necessary changes that we will need in 2016 and beyond. That I think is the most important role that can be played, not only by our politicians, not only by our leaders, but also by the civic organizations such as the JCs, which are very close to the people, which have a good understanding of the problems of everyday life. I have been going around preaching the gospel of unity, and I have been saying that many of the problems of our country can be traced back to the fact that in the last few years we have changed our attitude, especially in the higher levels of leadership. Instead of talking about uniting the Philippines, we have been hearing about efforts to divide us from each other. I think that we have seen the effects of that. We can tell, it is clear, that this has not been a successful road. We have to find a new way. We have to find a better way. We have to continue to think of how our services can be given to the people. We have to continue to think how we can move the country forward. Once again, I feel that the JCs have a part to play with that. The guiding principle, unity, should be Filipino first all the time. And we have to put aside, after all is said and done, we have to put aside our ethnic backgrounds. Whether you are Ilocano, whether you are Tagalog, you are Bicolano, you are Bisaya, whatever you come from, you must always remember, we must never forget that we are the Philippines. We are Filipino. And at the end, if we look around the world, and we must always remember, walang magmamahal sa Pilipinas kung hindi ang Pilipino rin. Walang tutulong at magsasakripisyo para sa Pilipinas kundi tayo rin, mga Pilipino. Let us live by that principle. Let us guide us. Let that principle guide us when we make our choices in May of this year. And let that be guiding principle continue. I believe that this movement of unity in our country is something that we need now. The elections, the campaign, the elections are but the first step to that. Let us continue to work for the unity of our country. Let us continue to work for the betterment of the lives of our people. And in the choice of the leaders that we will have, let us continue to think not for ourselves, not for our political party, not for our political group, but for the best that is good for all Filipinos. Thank you and good evening.